I'm going to ask you right now to be saved. Absolutely sure. You know, there are so many ways we talk about evangelism, and somebody has turned on a TV and heard that kind of thing, maybe been scared to death, or we want to talk about it in a local church, the changing face of evangelism. But you guys, I'm Knute Larson, Jeff Bogue, Jim Brown, but the gospel never changes. Come on. There's no change about evangelism. Let's talk about the gospel first, to be sure. Doesn't change.
Does not change, and the gospel needs to be clear and authoritatively presented with gentleness and respect in every service. The gospel starts with bad news. I'm a sinner. It ends with a wonderful news. My Savior loves me, came for me, died for me, the substitutionary atonement. That story needs to be told, and then an invitation needs to be given. Always doesn't change, shouldn't be backed off, but the way we do it has to change dramatically.
Jim, affirm your gospel, Christ's gospel. True? Never changes?
Yeah, it never changed. You know, I would add to what Jeff said. You know, I think with the gospel in a nutshell, we're messed up and we need fixed. We can't fix ourselves, so we need someone to fix us. And the only thing that can fix us is the perfect Jesus. He fixes us. So
how do we help our people with evangelism? Some principles. We don't have to go in any order, but we kid ourselves if we think they're all sharing their faith all the time. What can we do to motivate it or help them or encourage them?
Live it out. I mean, as a pastor of a church of 10, of 50, of 100, 200, no matter what size your church is, never expect anything from your people that you're not willing to do yourself. And so be willing to share your journey outside of the walls of the physical church building. Let them know this is how you're engaging. These are the conversations. You know, Mark Cahill said it best. Evangelism is not a presentation. It's a conversation. Tell them about your conversation. Talk about how you're living out your faith. Let them see that you're doing it, and they can learn from that.
We had a guy on staff who would tell me, you have not shared anything about trying to witness or ask questions or a relationship outside the church. It's time. And so I would try to, what do you do to help people be motivated in it?
Definitely the same thing. I think that's a huge part of it, that you have to lead the way. And this is what happens when you are personally sharing your faith and you are personally praying for your neighbors and trying to reach them, that will show up in your pulpit in very natural ways, just like telling stories about your kids or grandkids does. And so when you are doing it, you can't fake it. And when you're doing it, it becomes a natural part of your preaching, and it becomes a theme and an emphasis within the church. So definitely, I think that's a number one. The second thing that I would really push into is I don't believe that our people need to be equipped as much as they need to be aware. So I believe if you can quote John 3:16 and you know why you accepted Christ, you're equipped. You're good, right? If you run into a Buddhist, come talk to me and we'll figure out how to reach them with Bible verses. But seeing the world, seeing lost people, every human being has a soul, every soul has an eternal destiny, and God put you in the presence of that human being to affect that eternal destiny. So do I know if my neighbors are going to heaven or hell? Do I know if my coworkers, my classmates? That's a big start there, and we'll ask that question again and again and again. Not do you share your faith, or did you do a presentation with them, but do you know them? Are you praying for them? We did a thing a few years ago to emphasize that, where we called it our three. We got those rubber bracelets. I did this in service. Had people turn them inside out, put Sharpies all through the auditorium, and write the names of the first name of three people that you committed to pray for by name every day for I think it was 2 months. Well, the evangelism awareness then went through the roof, because I'm looking at my coworker differently. I'm praying for them differently. God's working in my heart differently. So we'll emphasize those kind of things. We do equipping. We'll do some classes and things like that. But that equipping has to happen in real time. Because there's no point of knowing how to lead a Muslim to Christ if you don't know any. So go make some friends, and then we'll wrestle with those issues.
I think you keep it at the forefront of your mission statement. Even this building that we're sitting in right now, this very room, this building, when we dedicated this building, before the concrete was poured, we had people bring rocks, and we put names of lost people on. It's under this. There are people that walk through our building and say, right there's a name of this person that I prayed for. One guy put it around our basketball court to 3-point line because he knew he'd be shooting a lot there. He misses a lot, but he prays right there.
You're not,
Knute Larson,
you're
was
not
that
talking
your
about me.
designation?
'Cause I've never missed a 3.
But I would say just keep it out in front.
Yep.
You guys are both aggressive, but you still talk about the gospel in a very kind way, in a
Yes.
warm way. That's crucial, how we model that from the pulpit.
You know, Newt, Jeff hit it and you hit it, just being kind. Here's another thing I often think about. When you plan or doing future things for your church, you're thinking, what's a way we can reach our community? We often say this in our leadership meetings. Someone has to have a voice for the lost. And so in the early days, to make sure that we did that, I actually brought in a chair and sat it down in meetings. We took it to meetings in restaurants. I know it sounds stupid. Our staff meets out in the community, but we had a vacant chair there and said, okay, this is what we think we should do. Now, someone speak as if you're a lost person. What would they be saying to reach me? So really just have a way that always, okay, who's going to have the voice for the lost? Think like they think.
Good. Jeff, you said something about responses from up front. What are the different ways we invite people from the pulpit? There's 1,000, there's 10 different ways we can help them see, I need to do something.
I think the way that you invite people evangelistically from the pulpit needs to be tied to your personality. So my personality, I'm not a come forward right now, let's sing one more verse guy. I'm not wired that way. I invite people to accept Christ weekly, and that happens almost weekly at our church. But the way I'll say it is, I will present the gospel. I think what Jim just did a minute ago, he walked through the gospel in a modern lingo that makes sense to a lost person. So I don't invite people to the foot of the cross or come and be washed by the blood of the Lamb. I'm not going to use those church terms. I'm going to say it differently. And then we use response cards every week. And so on those response cards, you can let us know that you start a relationship with Christ or want to talk more about that. We'll follow up on those immediately. And our evangelism is going to happen over a cup of coffee, not at the foot of a platform. But the invitation is gentle, it is respectful, and it's unapologetic. So it's never loud, it's never harsh, but gentle, respectful, and unapologetic. And then a quick and a real follow-up, and that's how we do it. And God uses that. That's my wiring to do it that way. Because Jim, you should talk about it. Jim, you would be very different that way.
I love what you're saying here, Jeff. Do something. Our gifting. My gifting would be I'm an evangelist gifting, so it's a natural byproduct of me and of my personality. So we would go. We plan in advance. Like we have a big Sunday for evangelism. We do have people come forward. Not only they raise their hand, but I believe personally that a public opportunity to say, hey, I'm a follower of Christ is such a good first step for people. So we invite them to come forward. We'll hand them something, give them a memorial. Old Testament's loaded with all kinds of remembrances. So we want them to remember what they did. So we come. But one of the things we love to do is we try to project ahead, and we'll say something like, okay, how many people do you think God's going to draw this week? We put our necks on the line. Like, here's what we say in staff meeting. Wow, we purchase all these things that we're going to give them, whether it's a light bulb or a key or a license plate. And we're saying, God, if you don't show up today and people don't get saved, we're going to look really stupid having all these things on stage. So there's this sense where we come in expecting, if we know it's an evangelistic service, God, we need you to come through or we're going to look really stupid here. And that's a good place to be because we're totally dependent on God. Both ways depend upon God, but we do a public response. And then we'll celebrate it. We'll have the band come out and we're cheering. And I'll say on a count of 3, the angels are celebrating. And there's this incredible celebration that takes place. So Both ways are good.
I think what Jim is saying is so important for all of us to hear, because he's being bold and intentional. Now, Jim is gifted as an evangelist. We're dear friends, and I respect him a ton for it. And he can lead people to Christ like nothing I've ever seen. He'll go hunting. He'll lead the deer to Christ before he shoots it, right? I am different. It's true, yeah. A lot of dear souls in heaven. And I want to say this as a point of encouragement. Those of you who are gifted as an evangelist need to be doing evangelism. Those of us who aren't can find that intimidating. That's why the apostle goes on and says, do the work of an evangelist. And that's my wiring. I'm more a diligent laborer with evangelism. And I have the privilege of leading a lot of people to Christ, but it's not because I'm Billy Graham, or Jim Brown. And I respect that immensely. I want you to hear me say that. But I want to faithfully do the work. And that's what Jim is also saying. Like, we plan for it, we get ready for it, we build it into our services, we execute it. I'm going to do the same thing, but do it differently. Mm-hmm. And that's the big point. And that's what I want my people to know. Do the work. Know your neighbor. Love them. Be involved in their life. It's okay if you don't lead the whole neighborhood to Jesus. But if you do that work, you'll wind up leading people to Jesus. And that's what I want them to focus on.
So many people go to church and still can't define the cross. We took a survey once at the chapel, before Willow Creek's Reveal survey, by the way. And in answer to the question...
Bill Hybels is amazing.
Yeah, I know, but let's keep going. But how many people I think the repetition of what happened at the cross and what it is we believe, not just we salute the cross, but we trust Jesus Christ as Savior and what the cross really means. Say it again and again and again. There's people who've been there 50 years who still maybe can't say it. Well, evangelism, the center of our message, the gospel, the good news. I'm Knute Larson with Jeff Bogue and Jim Brown, Pastorpedia. Thank you for caring.